EcoTricity's EcoTEC Roundup show from Aotearoa's only Carbon Zero certified renewable electricity company. We only source from wind, hydro and solar, and we are the leading supplier of electricity to electric vehicles in Aotearoa. Switch today at ecotricity.co.nz. Welcome back to another episode of news from the world of clean cars and green energy. Thank you for joining me. We start with a story that's getting a lot of attention in the media, some of it in the form of incorrect reporting surrounding Tesla's full self-driving beta in the US and Canada. The US National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has asked Tesla to recall all vehicles equipped with FSD Beta after investigations showed that FSD Beta had caused cars to act in an unsafe manner around intersections. This included driving straight through a turn-only lane, failing to come to a complete stop at a stop sign, and entering into a junction under a steady yellow light. The recall, of course, is actually a software update, something that has caused many Tesla fans to vent quite vociferously about unfair treatment. At the moment, NHTSA does not differentiate between an OTA update or a service visit in its definition of recall, and if it's dangerous, it doesn't matter how the fix is carried out, rather that it actually gets fixed. Another rapidly developing story this week came from Ford, which announced midweek that production and shipments of the Ford F150 Lightning pickup truck had been stopped due to a battery issue. Later in the week, Ford confirmed that the issues are related to an F150 Lightning catching fire outside at its production facility while undergoing its pre-delivery quality check. While Ford has yet to disclose additional information about the incident, it states that vehicles already at dealerships can be delivered to customers as scheduled, and a spokesperson for the company says it has identified a, quote, likely population of vehicles affected by the issue, end quote. Right now, the stop build and in-transit stop ship orders remain in effect, and Ford says it should have more information to share presently. No fires have been reported involving F150 Lightnings already in customers' hands. As usual, watch this space. Stellantis' truck arm Ram officially unveiled its Ram 1500 REV electric pickup truck in a Super Bowl commercial, targeting the performance anxiety of EV truck owners, done in the style of a medical advert for men with downstairs issues. The Ram 1500 REV spot targeted some traditional worries of new EV drivers, including range anxiety, towing capability and performance concerns. The hint in the advert was that the truck would be coming to market with range extending capabilities, meaning this would not just be a battery electric, but a range extended pickup. And early on Friday, we learned that the Ram REV Insider Plus program, where customers were invited to put down a $100 refundable fee, has reached its capacity. We don't know what the capacity is, but I'm going to guess fairly large. It's worth noting that the production version only has 2 rows of seats though, not 3. For years, the auto industry has sided with the fossil fuel industry and conservative lawmakers when it comes to emission standards for new cars. This week, several car companies, including Volvo, Ford, BMW, Volkswagen and Honda, alongside Lucid, Rivian and Tesla, all signed an amicus brief submitted to the US Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. in support of California and its Clean Air Act waiver, something that lets the state set tighter emission standards than those set by the federal government. California and the US EPA are currently fighting a case brought against them by 17 Republican-led US states who claim that the way California and the EPA acts is unfairly forcing a shift towards EVs and is in effect a regulatory overstep. As I've noted in the past week, it's strange that states which don't want EVs are also anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ. I just can't explain it. From lawmakers who are against anything that doesn't fit their definition of American to some more considered lawmakers, I have some really good news for EVs from Europe. That's because this week, the European Union Parliament finally approved a law effectively banning the sale of new petrol and diesel-powered cars in the EU from 2035 onwards. While this is great news, it's important to note the ban doesn't specifically ban internal combustion engined cars, only mandates that automakers must achieve a 100% cut in CO2 emissions for all new cars sold by 2035, which you would assume would make it impossible to sell anything other than battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell cars. However, with automakers already working on fossil fuel substitutes like so-called zero-carbon e-fuels, I'm sure someone will figure a workaround. The White House has unveiled new standards for EV charging networks that must be met before federal funds can be awarded. It's also confirmed that Tesla will be opening up some of its superchargers for non-Tesla EVs in the US, a fantastic piece of news that will dramatically improve the number and hopefully the reliability of public fast charging stations in the US for CCS-equipped vehicles. The new standards basically require that all EV fast charging sites have multiple stalls capable of fast charging, that they support all standards currently in use, support a minimum power level to be considered fast, must have a 97% uptime, are easy to find with up-to-date availability data, and must adopt forward-looking technologies like plug and charge. Additionally, they must make it easy to pay for charging without multiple apps and sign-ons. This is fantastic news for anyone in the US who owns an EV. Just before its F-150 Lightning stop production story broke this week, Ford announced that it's investing $3.5 billion into a new battery production facility in Michigan. The new facility, which Ford says will generate 2,500 jobs, is part of the company's shift towards using lithium iron phosphate batteries in its vehicles. LFP batteries, while less energy dense and power dense than current lithium ion batteries, have a longer lifespan and are more chemically stable and thus are less at risk of catching fire. They also require no cobalt or nickel to operate. While the news of the factory is great for Ford and EVs in the US, and Ford says it will be bringing LFP battery packs to F-150 Lightnings and Mustang Mach-E cars this year, Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill are not happy about the fact that Ford is using technology from Chinese firm CATL as part of its plans. As anyone who's tried to use a public charging station to fast charge a car that isn't a Tesla will attest to, charging station reliability is a major issue around the world. And this week, the J.D. Power Electric Vehicle Experience public charging study showed just how bad things are getting, detailing that the number of failed attempts to charge at public charging stations in the US grew from 15% in the first quarter of 2021 to more than 21% by the end of the third quarter last year. It recorded more than 26,500 charging attempts at a range of different charging stations across the US, both fast and level 2. While J.D. Power did not say which charging networks were the worst and which were the best, it noted one charging network had just a 3% fail rate. And I think we can all guess that that was likely Tesla. It's long been known that Tesla CEO Elon Musk is no fan of either labour unions or worker rights and has butted heads time and time again with attempts to unionize. And while Elon Musk has previously gone on the record to tell Tesla employees that they could unionize if they so wished, this week Tesla was back in the spotlight after an apparent mass firing of employees at Gigafactory Buffalo in New York, following an announcement by workers doing data annotation for Tesla Autopilot and FSD programs that they intended to unionize. There's already unfair dismissal proceedings against Tesla underway as a result, and Tesla has fired back with a blog post stating that those let go were fired due to poor performance on the job. Given that New York is known as a pro-union state and takes a very harsh attitude towards union busting, this one might be a tough battle for Tesla to fight. It's no secret that the fossil fuel industry had one of its best years ever last year, with obscenely large profits despite economic uncertainty around the world. And some fossil fuel companies like BP are using these profits to expand their EV charging portfolios with an almost relentless push to acquire existing EV charging providers. How you feel about that will of course depend on how you feel about BP, but this week we learned of two very important news stories that give you a hint at what BP is planning next. It's just announced a $1 billion investment into EV fast charging in collaboration with Hertz Rental in the US, and it's also expressed an interest in acquiring Travel Centers of America for $1.3 billion, which just last week announced a massive partnership with Electrify America. Yeah, try and join those dots. Before we get to the last two stories, I have a quick question for you. Are you in the market for a new electric car? If you are, and you live in Aotearoa, you should totally check out our very own buyer's guide at ecotricity.co.nz. It is packed with all the information you need to pick a car that's right for you, and includes plenty of details about incentives you can get, charging providers you can use, and of course, how to get charging and clean energy at home. So follow the link below and start your journey today. When you think of high-power drift cars, you probably think of gasoline-powered Japanese market sports coupes with heavy-duty clutches and racing tyres. So what if I told you that there's just been a new drifting record set, not by a JDM special, but by a Czech car brand in a stock production EV? Enter the 2024 škoda Enyaq RS IV, the slightly hotter variant of the affordable family electric wagon that you can buy in Europe. Fitted with a different brand of tyres on each axle to facilitate the record attempt, the car broke two records in the same day, one for the longest continuous vehicle drift on ice and one for the longest continual vehicle drift on ice for an EV. Sliding sideways for an astonishing 7.351 kilometres, that's 4.5 miles, this particular production EV's performance was ice cold. Sorry. And finally, in production now since 2010, the Nissan Leaf is one of the longest production EVs in history, with hundreds of thousands now on the world's roads. But as many Leaf owners can tell you, premature battery aging on early Leafs can lead to cars that aren't all that practical in everyday use. And so now we're starting to see the earliest and highest mileage Leafs out there take well-earned retirement, which is how one mechanic by the name of Derek Young decided to take a Nissan Leaf with a very sickly battery pack and combine it with a crashed Kawasaki ZX-10R to create a plug-in hybrid, motorcycle-engined, all-wheel drive Nissan Leaf. As featured in a video by Superfast Matt on YouTube, it's a conversion like no other we've seen, and you will either love it or hate it. For what it's worth, it's certainly not my cup of tea, but I can certainly appreciate the appeal and appreciate the engineering that went into it. And on that note, we are done for the day. Before I go though, do make sure you've hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest in EV news from this channel. And of course, if you haven't already switched, it is time to switch to Aotearoa's only carbon zero certified renewable electricity company. It is super easy to make the switch, and you'll be helping the nation wean itself off dirty energy and onto clean green power that will keep the land beautiful for generations to come. I'll be back with more awesome content very soon, as will the lovely Gavin Kiwi EV Shoebridge. If you haven't seen him surviving the terrible weather that you've all been having lately with an Atto keeping his home running, it's high time you watch it. And I'll be back next weekend for our usual roundup show. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope the storm cleanup has gone successfully and that you and yours are safe. I'm Nikki Gordon Bloomfield. Ka kite! See you next time.